Lying in that sterile hospital bed, ribs aching and head throbbing from the crash, I called my mother to ask for help with my newborn daughter. When she let out a long, put-upon sigh and told me she couldn't possibly come because she was busy packing for your sister's luxury vacation, I didn't shed a single tear. I didn't scream or beg. I simply opened my laptop right there in the trauma ward, logged into my banking portal, and with one deliberate keystroke, froze the $3,000 monthly medical support fund I had been dutifully sending them for the past 7 years. My mother was about to learn, in the coldest and most absolute way possible, exactly who was funding the lifestyle she constantly bragged about, and whose name was actually keeping the mortgage of her pristine suburban home afloat. Before I show you exactly how I systematically dismantled her facade and took back what was mine, subscribe to the channel. This isn't just a story, it's a blueprint for taking your power back. My name is Harper. I am 34 years old, and if there is one thing I understand better than anyone else, it is the architecture of a functioning system. I work as a senior logistics coordinator for a major regional freight and distribution hub here in Denver. My days are measured in tonnage, route optimizations, supply chain bottlenecks, and ironclad contracts. I am not a Wall Street financier, but I know how to track a missing pallet of goods across 3 state lines using nothing but a spreadsheet and a discrepancy report. I am a woman who clawed her way into middle management through sheer, unrelenting grit. I don't do panic. When a system fails, I don't cry. I find the fracture, isolate the variable, and rebuild it. My personal life was governed by the same rigid, unforgiving discipline. As a single, working mother to my beautiful newborn daughter, Lily, there was no room for error. Every hour of my day was color-coded in my calendar. Every dollar I earned was allocated with surgical precision. And the largest, heaviest allocation on that spreadsheet was the $3,000 I wired every single month, on the first of the month, at exactly 8 a.m., to an account managed by my mother, Susan. For 7 years, that money was my unquestioned duty. I was led to believe it was keeping my father alive. He had a chronic, complicated heart condition, and my mother had woven a masterful narrative of failing insurance policies, denied claims, and exorbitant out-of-pocket costs for his specialized care. I never asked to see the receipts. You don't audit your own father's heartbeat. You just work the overtime. You skip the vacations. You buy your clothes at discount racks so that the wire transfer never bounces. But looking back, the data points of their deception were always there, scattered like crumbs on a polished marble floor. Susan was a woman entirely consumed by the curation of her image. She lived in a sprawling, 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood where the homeowners association dictated the exact shade of beige you could paint your mailbox. Her calls to me were never to ask about my grueling shifts or how I was managing the sleep deprivation of early motherhood. Instead, her voice would float through the receiver, laced with a practiced, breathy exhaustion, complaining about the rising costs of organic grooming for her golden retriever, or sighing over the unavoidable expense of reupholstering the sunroom furniture. Then there was my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe, who was 26, but lived with the entitled insulation of a medieval royal. While I was drinking stale breakroom coffee at 4 a.m. to monitor a delayed freight train in Wyoming, Chloe was cultivating an aesthetic. She called herself an influencer, a vague title that seemed to require absolutely no output but yielded an endless stream of unboxing videos and Instagram stories featuring pristine white sand beaches, overpriced matcha lattes, and designer handbags. Whenever I visited them, the dissonance hummed in the air like a faulty fluorescent bulb. I would sit on their pristine, cream-colored sofa in my practical, dark-washed jeans, feeling like a heavy, utilitarian object placed in the middle of an art gallery. Susan would look at my scuffed sensible boots, then at Chloe's gleaming manicured nails, and offer a tight, pitying smile. "Harper, sweetie, you really should treat yourself more," Susan would murmur, adjusting a cashmere throw over her lap. "Life isn't just about working yourself to the bone. Look at your sister. She manifests abundance." I would just nod, swallow the bile of exhaustion, and go back to Denver to work another 60-hour week. I tolerated the microaggressions. I ignored the sting of Chloe complaining about the exhausting layout of first-class cabins while I calculated if I could afford name-brand diapers for Lily that week. I did it because I believed I was the structural beam holding up the roof over my ailing father's head. I believed every sacrifice was a necessary equation. I believed it all. Until that rainy Tuesday night, when the tires lost their grip on the slick interstate, the metal crumpled around me, the glass shattered into 1,000 jagged diamonds, and the illusion I had spent 7 years of my life funding finally bled out on the wet asphalt. The scent of rain on wet asphalt was abruptly replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of iodine and industrial bleach. My transition from the crumpled, smoking chassis of my sedan on Interstate 25 to the blinding, sterile expanse of Denver General's trauma ward felt less like a medical emergency and more like a hostile cargo transfer. I was the damaged freight. My inventory of injuries was documented by a frantic, young resident with a tablet, a fractured collarbone, 2 broken ribs on the left side, a mild concussion, and a network of deep, purple contusions webbing across my chest from the seatbelt. The physical pain was a dull, heavy throb, like a subwoofer vibrating against my bones, but my mind was entirely insulated from it. I was a logistics coordinator. Pain was just an environmental variable. The real crisis was the supply chain breakdown of my personal life. I needed to be under observation for 48 hours. That was the immovable constraint. The immediate variable was Lily. My newborn daughter was safe at my apartment with Mrs. Higgins, my elderly neighbor who occasionally covered the gap between my shift ending and daycare starting. But Mrs. Higgins had a hard cutoff at 9 p.m. due to her own medication schedule. It was currently 8:14 p.m. I had exactly 46 minutes to secure a reliable, secure transport and overnight housing solution for a 3-month-old infant. My mother, Susan, lived in a gated subdivision in Cherry Creek, exactly 22 minutes from my apartment. I asked the nurse to retrieve my phone from the plastic evidence bag containing my ruined clothes. The screen was cracked, a jagged spiderweb of glass, but the interface still functioned. I dialed Susan's number. It rang 5 times. When the line finally connected, I didn't hear the breathless panic of a mother receiving a call from an emergency room. I heard the smooth, syncopated rhythm of a jazz playlist in the background, accompanied by the distinct crisp rustle of tissue paper. "Harper, sweetie," Susan answered, her voice stretched thin with an artificial, practiced exhaustion. "Is this an emergency? Because I am absolutely drowning in packing cubes right now." I kept my voice flat, stripping it of any emotional resonance.
"Mom."
I was in a car accident on I-25. A semi clipped my rear bumper. I'm at Denver General. I have broken ribs and a fractured collarbone. They are keeping me for 2 days. I need you to go to my apartment and pick up Lily from Mrs. Higgins. She needs to be relieved in 40 minutes. There was a pause on the line. It wasn't a silence of shock or horror. It was the heavy, calculating silence of someone being handed a schedule conflict they had no intention of accommodating. "Oh, Harper," she sighed. It was a wet, heavy exhalation, the kind of sigh one might use when a restaurant brings the wrong vintage of wine. Are you sure they need to keep you? Can't you just take an Uber home? You always overreact to these medical things." "My bones are broken, Susan," I stated, the factual weight of the words dropping into the receiver. "Well, I just don't see how I can possibly manage this tonight," she said, her tone suddenly shifting into a defensive, rapid-fire cadence. "Chloe's flight to St. Bart's is at 6 in the morning. Do you have any idea how complicated it is to pack a silk wardrobe for a humid climate? We are doing a final fitting for her resort wear. The sponsor sent these gorgeous linen wraps, but they wrinkle if you even look at them. I am elbow-deep in tissue paper and garment bags. I simply cannot drop everything and drive across town to deal with the baby right now. Call one of your little work friends." I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I stared at the ceiling of the trauma bay, focusing on a single, dead pixel in the fluorescent light fixture above my bed. In a fraction of a second, a massive, structural collapse occurred in my mind. For 7 years, I had built my life around a fundamental operating principle. My family needs me, so I must sacrifice for them. It was a flawed algorithm. The data had always been corrupt, but I had stubbornly refused to audit the code. She wasn't packing for a life-saving surgery. She was packing for a 26-year-old's sponsored beach vacation. And that took precedence over my broken body and my helpless child. "I understand," I said. My voice was quieter now, possessing the terrifying, absolute stillness of a frozen lake. "Enjoy the trip. We will, sweetie. Drink some water and get some rest." "Love you," she chirped, the problem already dismissed from her reality. She ended the call. I didn't throw the phone. I calmly opened my contact list, dialed the emergency backup line for a premium, 24/7 licensed nanny agency I kept on file for absolute disasters, and authorized a 2-day, triple-rate emergency placement using my emergency credit card. The logistics were settled. The crisis was contained. But the shift inside me was permanent. The woman who had bled herself dry for the sake of a fictional family dynamic died in that trauma bed. What remained was just the logistics coordinator, evaluating a drastically reconfigured supply chain. Looking up at the flickering fluorescent light on the ceiling, I didn't yet know that everything I thought I knew about my family was a massive, expensive lie. Not until the door to my hospital room opened the next morning and my grandfather walked in. The morning light in Denver General was unapologetically harsh, filtering through the horizontal blinds to cast sharp, jail cell shadows across my pale green thermal blanket. The rhythmic, mechanical hiss of the blood pressure monitor provided a steady metronome to the throbbing in my left collarbone. I had survived the night. The premium nanny agency had sent a bonded, fiercely competent woman named Maria to my apartment to care for Lily, sending me time-stamped text updates and photos every 2 hours. The immediate supply chain of my daughter's survival was secure. At 9:15 a.m., the heavy wooden door of my room swung open with a soft click. It wasn't a doctor. It was my grandfather, Arthur. At 78, Arthur was a man who had weathered life with quiet, unassuming grace. He wore a faded corduroy jacket that smelled faintly of peppermint and old library books. He had driven his beat-up Subaru across town in the morning traffic, having heard about the accident not from my mother, but from Mrs. Higgins, who had called him in a panic the night before. He shuffled to the side of my bed, his weathered hands wrapping around my uninjured right hand. His eyes, milky but sharp, scanned the heavy bruising on my neck. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just sat in the vinyl visitor's chair, exhaling a long, ragged breath. He told me he was heading to my apartment right after this to relieve the agency nanny. "Family takes care of family, Harper," he murmured, a gentle rebuke to my mother's absence, though he was too polite to say her name. I thanked him, the tension in my chest loosening a fraction. I asked how my dad was doing, knowing the stress of my accident might trigger his delicate heart condition. Arthur offered a soft, reassuring smile, patting my hand. "He's resting easy, kiddo. Don't you worry about him. The new pacemaker is doing its job, and honestly, it's a blessing the financials aren't a burden on him anymore. That comprehensive Medicare plan he got bumped into 3 years ago? It's a miracle. Covers every single appointment, every pill, every procedure. They haven't had to pay a dime out of pocket since 2023. The room went entirely, terrifyingly quiet. The hum of the 4 pumps seemed to evaporate. The distant chatter from the nurse's station faded into a muted vacuum. I stared at the deep, intersecting lines on my grandfather's knuckles. I didn't ask him to repeat himself. I didn't gasp. A logistics coordinator knows when a critical piece of data completely invalidates the current operational model. Not a dime out of pocket since 2023. Arthur stayed for another 10 minutes, filling the silence with gentle rambling about the weather and Lily's teething, completely oblivious to the catastrophic detonation he had just triggered in my mind. When he finally stood up, kissed my forehead, and left to go be with my daughter, I remained perfectly still for 60 seconds. I was compartmentalizing the betrayal, sealing the shock behind a heavy, blast-proof door in my brain. Then, fighting the searing pain in my ribs, I reached for my cracked phone on the tray table and activated its mobile hotspot. I pulled my titanium work laptop from my ruined canvas tote bag on the floor. I didn't cry. I opened a new browser window. If you are watching this and you've ever had to work twice as hard just to get half the respect, Or, if you've ever been bled dry by the people who are supposed to protect you, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is about what happens when you stop being polite and start keeping receipts. Stay with me. I logged into my primary banking portal. The interface was sterile, logical, and beautiful. I navigated directly to the recurring transfers matrix. There it was, the monthly $3,000 outgoing wire. Destination: Susan Miller. Memo: Medical Support Fund. For years, I had treated this transaction as a sacred duty, something beyond scrutiny. Now I looked at it with the cold, predatory gaze of an auditor who has just found a multi-million-dollar discrepancy in a vendor's ledger. I needed the routing architecture. I clicked on the transfer history, downloading 7 years of PDFs. I opened a blank spreadsheet, my weapon of choice. I started tracing the digital footprints. Susan had always insisted on managing the money, claiming Dad was too stressed to handle bills. 3 years ago, she had sent me a thick stack of DocuSign links, citing a new tax exemption strategy for medical dependents. I had signed them between double shifts, barely skimming the legalese. I logged into my IRS portal. I pulled my filed tax returns for the last 3 years. I cross-referenced the dependent care deduction form Susan's accountant had filed on my behalf. There, buried on page 4 of a Schedule C addendum, was the destination of my wire transfers. The money wasn't going into a joint checking account for my parents. The routing number corresponded to a corporate account at a boutique bank in Cherry Creek. The recipient was registered as an LLC. I tabbed over to the Colorado Secretary of State's business database. I typed in the entity name listed on my tax form. The search took 1.4 seconds. The result rendered on my screen in crisp, black Arial font. Entity name: Serenity Lifestyle Consulting, LLC. Registered agent: Chloe Miller. Principal address: Susan's home address. I stopped typing. The silence in the hospital room was absolute. I was funding an LLC. I was the sole venture capitalist for Chloe's manufactured Instagram reality. Every overpriced matcha latte, every first-class upgrade to St. Bart's, every designer luggage set they were currently packing, it was all financed by the sweat off my back and the supposed failing heart of my father. They had weaponized my sense of duty, laundered the money through a shell company to avoid gift taxes, and used it to curate a life of fraudulent luxury. A lesser woman might have screamed. She might have drafted a hysterical, tear-soaked text message to her mother, demanding answers. But I don't operate on emotion. I operate on systems. Susan and Chloe had built a very comfortable, highly leveraged system on the foundation of my labor. Looking at the spreadsheet glowing in the dim hospital lighting, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt the icy, thrilling precision of a demolition expert calculating exactly where to place the C4. They thought I was just the heavy, utilitarian workhorse, safely out of sight in Denver. They forgot that the workhorse is the only one who knows how the carriage is actually held together. And with a few clicks, I was about to remove the linchpin. The pain medication they had pumped into my fore was beginning to lose its hazy, numbing grip, leaving behind a sharp, localized burn in my chest every time I inhaled. I welcomed the clarity. I didn't want to be numb for this. I adjusted the tilt of my hospital bed with my good arm, propping my laptop securely on my uninjured thigh. The glowing screen was the only source of light in the dim room, casting a pale, bluish reflection against the sterile white walls. I was no longer a daughter reeling from betrayal. I was a logistics coordinator staring at a catastrophic supply chain failure, and my first objective was containment. If I simply cut off the funds and confronted them immediately, it would be messy. Susan would pivot to hysterics, weaponizing my father's health, while Chloe would play the victim on her social media, spinning a narrative of her cruel, financially abusive older sister. I needed to quarantine the target variables. I needed them to remain perfectly relaxed, basking in the Caribbean sun, completely oblivious to the fact that their financial life support had just been unplugged. I navigated to the banking portal's Wire Management tab. With a single click of the trackpad, the recurring $3,000 transfer scheduled for the first of the month was terminated. The system prompted a confirmation box. I clicked delete. The line item vanished from the ledger, leaving a beautifully clean, empty digital space. But a missing transfer would trigger an immediate, panicked phone call from Street Barts. To prevent this, I opened my email client and drafted a highly specific, automated message designed to mimic a banking institution's automated security protocols. I set the sender alias to route through a proxy server and formatted the text with the bank's exact hex code colors and corporate boilerplate. Notice regarding your incoming transfer. Due to enhanced end-of-year security protocols, your pending ACH transfer is currently under routine review. Funds will be released following a standard 15-day verification hold. No further action is required at this time. I scheduled the email to arrive in Susan's inbox at exactly 8:01 a.m. on the 1st of the month. It was just bureaucratic enough to be believable and just reassuring enough to prevent them from digging deeper. They would simply charge their vacation expenses to their credit cards, confident that the medical fund would cover the balance in 2 weeks. With a containment perimeter established, I moved to the offensive phase. I opened a new tab and typed in the web address for the Internal Revenue Service. The federal government's website was stark, utilitarian, and visually unappealing. Everything Chloe's curated lifestyle was not. I navigated to the whistleblower office section and downloaded Form 211, Application for Award for Original Information. The IRS does not operate on emotion. They operate on documentation. And I had a meticulously maintained 7-year paper trail of wire transfers categorized on my tax returns as dependent medical care. I began attaching the PDFs of my Schedule C addendums. Then, working with the ruthless efficiency of an auditor, I opened a side-by-side window with Chloe's public Instagram profile. I systematically took time-stamped screenshots. An unboxing video of a $4,000 Chanel flap bag posted 2 days after my $3,000 medical wire cleared. A geotagged photo of a private cabana in Tulum perfectly aligning with the month Susan claimed my father needed a specialized, out-of-pocket cardiac scan. I compiled the images into a dense, indisputable dossier, cross-referencing the fraudulent tax deductions with the undeniable proof of luxury consumption. I was handing the federal government a fully packaged, irrefutable case of tax evasion and wire fraud, tied neatly with a bow. I signed the Form 211 digitally and hit submit. The confirmation screen loaded in less than a second. There was one final loose end, the foundational asset of their illusion. 5 years ago, Susan had convinced me to co-sign the refinancing agreement on their sprawling Cherry Creek home. She had claimed it was to secure a lower interest rate to help pay for Dad's medications. My flawless credit score and substantial income as a corporate coordinator had been the only reason the underwriter approved the loan. I logged into the mortgage servicer's portal. Deep in the terms of the master promissory note, there was a standard clause regarding guarantor release and material changes in financial circumstances. I drafted a formal legal notice to the lender, executing a unilateral withdrawal of my financial guarantee due to discovered fraudulent misrepresentation by the primary borrower. By legally severing my income from the loan-to-value ratio, I was triggering an automatic, catastrophic default protocol. The bank would instantly issue a 30-day demand for Susan to requalify for the mortgage on her own merit, a merit she mathematically did not possess. I closed the laptop. The fan whirred softly into silence. The physical pain in my collarbone was still there, but my mind was a fortress of absolute, crystalline calm. The architecture of their ruin was entirely in place. When they returned from the Caribbean, a welcome dinner awaited them. But the menu was just facts. The invitation to Thanksgiving dinner arrived via a flawlessly embossed, cream-colored card in the mail, as if my near-fatal car accident and the subsequent silence between us were nothing more than a minor scheduling conflict that had been politely resolved. Susan always operated under the assumption that if a table was set with enough sterling silver and imported crystal, reality could simply be overwritten. I arrived exactly on time. The air in Cherry Creek was crisp, carrying the scent of burning cedar and approaching winter. I parked my rental car across the street from the sprawling colonial house my salary had been secretly stabilizing for years. Getting out of the car was a slow, agonizing algebraic equation of weight distribution. My left arm was immobilized in a dark sling, and I relied on a heavy, aluminum orthopedic cane to offset the pressure on my healing ribs. Every step up the cobblestone walkway sent a dull spike of pain through my chest, but my mind was entirely insulated from the physical sensation. I was not walking into a family holiday gathering. I was a structural engineer arriving at a demolition site, carrying the detonator in my leather tote bag. The heavy mahogany door swung open before I even reached the porch. The foyer smelled aggressively of roasted sage, expensive vanilla candles, and entitlement. Susan ushered me inside with a flurry of performative concern, her eyes expertly avoiding the dark purple bruising that still peeked above the collar of my practical turtleneck. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than my first car, bustling toward the dining room while offering a monologue about the difficulty of sourcing a truly free-range heritage turkey. I followed the sound of her voice into the dining room. The table was a masterpiece of domestic theater. Linen napkins folded into intricate swans, crystal wine glasses catching the light of the chandelier, and at the center of it all, my sister. Chloe was draped across a velvet accent chair, sipping a mimosa. The contrast between us was almost comical. While I stood leaning heavily on my medical cane, pale and battered, Chloe was a vision of radiant, unearned vitality. Her skin bore the deep, golden bronze of a 2-week Caribbean sun. She wore a pristine white cashmere sweater that perfectly accentuated her tan, her wrists heavy with layered gold bracelets that clinked like wind chimes every time she moved her hands to emphasize a point about the dreadful service at their luxury resort. Grandpa Arthur was seated quietly at the far end, sipping water, offering me a warm, knowing nod as I took my seat. My father was resting in the den, Susan claimed, having found the holiday commotion a bit too taxing. It was the perfect setup. I didn't touch the water they poured for me. I didn't unfold my swan napkin. I simply sat, perfectly still, letting the ambient noise of their delusion wash over me. Chloe spent the first 20 minutes delivering a curated oral presentation of her Instagram feed, detailing the private cabanas, the exclusive beach clubs, and the exhausting demands of maintaining her aesthetic while traveling. Susan beamed at her with the unfiltered pride of a mother who truly believed her daughter was royalty. They hadn't noticed the missing transfer yet. The automated email had done its job. They were coasting on credit, buoyed by the absolute certainty that my labor would inevitably cover the bill. "Harper, you are being awfully quiet," Susan noted, pausing mid-sentence as she carved a slice of artisanal bread. Her tone was laced with that familiar, patronizing edge. "You really should try to enjoy the holiday, sweetie. You always bring the stress of that warehouse into my dining room." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the fragile, hollow architecture of her entire existence. "I'm not stressed, Mom," I said softly, my voice completely devoid of any thermal energy. In fact, I've never felt more organized. I unzipped my leather tote bag. The sound was deafening in the sudden quiet of the room. I reached inside and withdrew 2 thick, oversized manila envelopes. They were heavy, packed with certified mail receipts, bank ledgers, and federal letterheads. I slid the first envelope across the polished mahogany table until it bumped gently against Chloe's crystal water glass. "What is this?" Chloe asked, a delicate frown wrinkling her bronzed forehead. She didn't open it. The return address in the top left corner, Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation Division, was printed in bold, unfeeling block letters. "That is a formal notification of a federal tax audit and an ongoing fraud investigation into Serenity Lifestyle Consulting," I stated, the words dropping like lead weights onto the linen tablecloth. "They are particularly interested in the intersection of your claimed corporate expenses and the medical support funds fraudulently routed through your LLC." Chloe's hand froze midair. The gold bracelets stopped clinking. The color beneath her Caribbean tan seemed to instantly curdle into a sickly, pale yellow. Before Susan could process the syllables that had just left my mouth, I slid the second, slightly thicker envelope to the head of the table. "And that," I continued, my eyes locking onto Susan's widening pupils, "is a copy of the formal demand letter from the mortgage servicer." I have legally withdrawn my financial guarantee as a co-signer on this property due to documented financial misrepresentation. The bank has initiated an acceleration clause. You have 30 days to requalify for the entire balance of the loan on your own, or the eviction and foreclosure proceedings begin automatically. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a thick, suffocating vacuum. The ambient hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen suddenly sounded like a jet engine. Susan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at the envelope, then at me, the polished veneer of her reality cracking, splintering, and collapsing in real time. She reached out with a trembling hand, her manicured fingers hovering over the heavy paper as if it were radioactive. "Harper," she whispered, a thin, reedy sound completely devoid of its usual authority. What have you done?" I didn't lean forward. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed my hands on the curved handle of my aluminum cane. "I fixed a broken supply chain," I said, my voice as cold and smooth as polished glass. "Your funding is permanently cut. Any further communication will go exclusively through my attorney." I didn't wait for the tears. I didn't wait for the inevitable, hysterical bargaining. I slowly pushed myself up from the chair, the pain in my ribs a sharp reminder of the reality I lived in, a reality they would now be forced to join. I adjusted my sling, turned my back on the meticulously set table, and walked out. Pulling the heavy front door shut behind me, the sound of rising panic from inside was the most beautiful melody I had ever heard. But the real consequences would unfold weeks later. The wheels of federal bureaucracy turn slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. I didn't need to be in Cherry Creek to witness the collapse of Susan and Chloe's curated empire. I simply tracked the fallout through the sterile, indisputable data of public records and the sudden, deafening silence that followed Thanksgiving. When the IRS Criminal Investigation Division initiates an asset freeze, there is no dramatic raid, no cinematic confrontation. It happens with a few keystrokes in a federal database. Chloe's bank accounts, both personal and the fraudulent LLC, were locked down within 14 days. Her Instagram account, once a relentless, daily barrage of unboxing videos, sponsor tags, and resort tours, abruptly went dark in the second week of December. The final post was a sponsored ad for a collagen powder. The next day, there was nothing. No tearful explanation, no perfectly lit apologies. Just a digital void. Through my attorney, I learned the specifics of the mechanical breakdown. Chloe's leased Range Rover was quietly repossessed from the driveway of the Cherry Creek house just before Christmas. The tow truck driver didn't care about her follower count or her aesthetic. He only cared about the default notice from the dealership. The IRS audit had uncovered not just the misappropriation of my medical funds, but a staggering web of undeclared income and fraudulent business write-offs. Chloe was facing severe civil penalties, forced to liquidate whatever authentic designer goods she possessed just to retain a tax attorney. The influencer was finally learning the true cost of her influence. Susan's downfall was equally mathematical. The bank, having received my formal withdrawal of financial guarantee, triggered the acceleration clause exactly as the contract stipulated. Susan was given 30 days to prove she had the income to support the massive mortgage on her own. Without my paycheck propping up the debt-to-income ratio, the underwriter's automated system rejected her appeal in milliseconds. They didn't wait for the sheriff to arrive with an eviction notice. The humiliation of a public foreclosure in their pristine, beige mailbox neighborhood was too much for Susan's ego to bear. By mid-January, a short sale sign was hammered into the manicured front lawn. Susan and Grandpa Arthur moved out on a bitter, snowy Tuesday. They relocated to a small, two-bedroom apartment in a distinctly ungated community in Aurora. It had linoleum kitchen floors, low ceilings, and baseboard heating that clanked loudly in the night. It was a perfectly adequate, ordinary place to live. But for a woman who had spent a decade pretending she belonged to the suburban elite, it was a profound, suffocating exile. Arthur, ever the stoic, adapted without complaint, his medical needs still completely covered by the Medicare plan my mother had so expertly hidden from me. He was safe, and that was the only variable that mattered. As for me, My new normal began on the 1st of January. I woke up at 6 a.m., the winter sun just beginning to cast a pale, icy blue light over Denver. My collarbone had healed to a dull ache, and I could finally breathe without the sharp stab of broken ribs. I made a cup of coffee in my quiet kitchen, the scent of dark roast blending with a faint, sweet smell of Lily's baby lotion wafting from the nursery. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking portal. For 7 years, the first of the month had been a day of depletion. A day where $3,000 vanished from my ledger, leaving me to calculate groceries, gas, and daycare with a sickening knot of anxiety in my stomach. This morning, the matrix was beautifully, undeniably clean. The balance sat there in bold, digital ink. The money was mine. The compounding interest, the emergency fund, the college savings account for Lily, it was all structurally secure. The crushing gravity of their manufactured crisis was gone, leaving me floating in a space of absolute financial and emotional solvency. I closed the laptop and walked into the nursery. Lily was awake, her tiny hands reaching up toward the mobile spinning above her crib. I picked her up, feeling the solid, reassuring weight of her against my chest. Society conditions us to believe that family is an unconditional supply chain. We are taught that blood demands infinite grace, infinite patience, and infinite sacrifice. But I am a logistics coordinator. I know that any system built on a foundation of one-sided extraction is destined to collapse. Family is not just biological proximity. It is an infrastructure of mutual respect, honesty, and strictly enforced boundaries. I had stopped being the workhorse pulling a carriage of lies. I had audited my own life, identified the toxic liabilities, and cut them loose. The air in my apartment was light. The future was mine to architect, piece by piece, dollar by dollar, built on a foundation of undeniable truth. If this reminded you of a battle you had to win in silence, share this video, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I'll see you in the next story.